Well, in the beginning, you know, when you move into a new co-housing project, everyone has to understand and learn more about how to function together in the common spaces. And so there is a period that I should call like we are making social inventions, how to make this function. And of course there are moments when we quarrel and we don't really, we are searching for possibilities. But I think that the idea of co-housing, it functions and it functions well. It's so interesting to, I was one of those who was forming that idea in Sweden 40 years ago. It's a long time ago. And we then were quite scary, but because we realized that people were trying to use our ideas when starting new co-housing communities. And we were afraid that it all was a big mistake. Perhaps we had made people engage in something that was not functioning at all. So that small group of women I was a part of, we started visiting all the new co-housing projects in Sweden, one after the other. And we learned that the idea functions, and every group forms it together to a very special unit. No one is as the other one, but they all have those basic ideas in the bottom, and they do function. So my ideas haven't changed for 40 years. Okay. I would never dream to go back living in an ordinary flat alone. This is so much better to have neighbors all around you when you need them, but you also have your own privacy in your own flat. And that's so important, this combination of privacy and community. I really do think that we live 5 to 10 years longer, actually, because we have fun, we continue to learn things, we meet new people and new ideas. One thing that I found really interesting was when I moved into Färdknäppen, as my co-housing unit is called. It was that I knew 1 or 2 persons beforehand. So there were 50 new persons I'd met just a few times before we moved in the preparation, during the preparation for. And it's something quite special when you are 50 years old to have the right to get to know 50 new persons you never met before. And since the idea behind the co-housing is that you do things together, you take responsibility together, this is also a really good way of getting to know people. And you don't have to love them. You can, but you don't have to be good friends with all of them, but it's a really nice way of meeting new people, learning new things as you grow older. It's not the only solution, but I think it's a good solution if you want to keep on living and take an interest in society, and to live in a way that also has other really important aspects, because you save energy, you save natural resources, and that's also important today in this period of climate change. You have to do everything to avoid using too much of the resources that we've got together. And co-housing is a way you can diminish your own private flat and you have more space together, and you have lots of opportunities. You can ask your neighbors about things you don't know. You can learn from them. There are things you can borrow to use, and so you have less and you get richer. That's the good thing about it. Well, I think that's also a question about different cultures, and I think that you in Spain have to find your own ways, and we have perhaps different solutions in Sweden, but still it's about realizing that it's about us. It's not only about me. In my house we are 27 persons, everyone with his or her ideas and ambitions, but you have to listen to the group, so that's important. And we have a very special tool in our house. We call it a sofa, and it means that we are taking all our major decisions on general meetings in the house. But if we feel that, oh, this question is not, it's not the right time to take a decision. We are unsure. People are thinking like this or like that, and so we have to sit down and talk together over this special question in our big sofa, because we have a big sofa. So whenever we meet a problem that's unsolved and needs some more thinking about it, then we say, let's have a sofa. And that's a way of telling one another that this is a problem, we don't know the solution yet, let's talk about it, no decisions yet, just everyone is telling what he or she thinks, and then later on we can take a decision. In Sweden we are used to a decision system that's not consensus. We do vote actually on our meetings if we have to, but when you have discussed something deeply, then you can vote and you can accept that, oh, so many more than me thought in a different way. I have to accept that the will of our community is not mine. I have to live with it. So there are conflicts, and we are not always solving them. There are people who don't like one another, but still they accept to live together, and they accept this situation. So sometimes I think we have a quarrel because we actually do need it to let the smoke away somehow. So we do quarrel. Well, I think the most important thing is that architects have big ears and listen to the group, because the group knows more about the ideas behind the project than the architect. And most architects are actually unused to co-housing. They don't know so much, so they have to learn new things. But then what is important is to have really nice common spaces. Common spaces you meet as soon as you enter your building. Common spaces that are open. We have like big windows from the entrance area to the dining room, to the common room, to the workshop, and to other rooms, so you can see what's going on. Of course, you can just walk through everything and go home to your own flat and close your door and forget your neighbors. But when you are down in the common spaces, they shall be open and inviting, and you shall see what people are doing together. That's important. And then I have another thing that architects shouldn't forget, and that's storage rooms. Storage rooms for all those things you have together. And you need also a good sound isolation between the flats and the common spaces, so you can use those without disturbing one another. and you need also a good acoustic milieu, because especially when you get older, it's important that you can hear what other people are saying and be a part of the group without having problems because your hearing is a bit impaired, as it will be when you get older. Yes, I can only talk about Sweden because I don't know the way you design your housing projects in Spain. But in Sweden at the moment, most clients, property owners, are trying to avoid common spaces and possibilities to community. I think that's totally wrong. I think that in the future we do need to cooperate a lot, and we do need spaces where we can meet close to where we live, that we can use together. So I think that the ideas behind modern housing in Sweden are really bad. But one thing that you should understand about how we do it in Sweden, our flats are smaller than ordinary flats, and we take those square meters and put them together, and we pay for those square meters in the rent. So we pay for both the common spaces and our private spaces, but we don't pay more than if we should have an ordinary flat. And that makes it possible, almost possible, to afford it. In some countries now there are professional developers or house property owners who engage in co-housing projects in order to make the process shorter and to have not so long a period from the ideas to when you can move in. And I think that's important. And I also think that cities and municipalities could do more to forward this way of group-initiated processes. So it's very important actually that politicians see the possibilities, make the planning process more simple for these kind of projects. And I do think that most politicians at the moment have no idea what's going on all over Europe. So many groups interested in living this way, looking for possibilities, being good. They are like, you're talking about, I was in a study tour to Germany, and they see Baugruppen or Baugemeinschaften as an important social factor because they give social stability to an area, and that's also important. And of course it's a way of it's a good way for the municipality to save money actually when you build like this, but they haven't realized that yet. You have to tell them time after time. Well, I think that this era of consumism, of being on your own, only relying on your networks in your cell phone and so on, I think that this is slowly changing, that people again are realizing that you do need other people, you need to meet face to face. You can't substitute community with technical solutions. So I think we'll go back to a combination of technical solution and meeting other people face to face. And that's really important, I think, to give people the opportunity to live in a way that gives these possibilities to meet. Well, that's really interesting, because you are really training to be, you are training actually democracy when you are living like this, because you have to invent, socially invent, the methods how to take decisions together, how to respect one another's decision, and it's so interesting that it actually is a training in human relationships that we all need. And I think it's especially good for children. Even if I'm living in a co-housing for the second half of life, I think that those children who have the opportunity to grow up this way with lots of other grown-ups, not only their parents, that they get to know, with lots of other children, not only their sisters and brothers, if they do have any. This is such a good way of growing up. And so I wish many more children had the possibility. It's a good way of growing old too, but for children it's really important. And it's good for families. Not to be the only ones that are important to their children. It's good for a man and a woman to have other grown up close to them without well, I think it can make marriages last longer. Actually, it's a good medicine for everything, isn't it? Co-housing. Yes, that's interesting too, because it could look like a threat that people are deciding by themselves together, doing things together, not letting the market handling everything. Because no one can earn that much money on us, because we are doing things without getting paid and so on. So it might be seen as a threat. But I know about a municipality in Sweden where there is a very active group forwarding senior co-housing. And in the beginning, the politicians and the employed in the municipality, the planners, they said, well, why are they doing this? We know best. We know how to handle this. We don't need them. But after a few years working, seeing what they were trying to do in this small association, they realized that they could cooperate and that it was a win-win situation to work together and for those groups trying to form new ways of living for seniors in that small municipality in Sweden. So the politicians, they changed, but it took 10 years. It takes time. Well, as I said, living in co-housing is actually a practical school in democracy, in how you can cooperate, how you solve problems. And this is something that also the children are part of, even if they are not always as active as they could be. And I think this is a new way of, it's a way of learning new things actually. And that's good, we need that.
All as part of putting them together, the co-housing and the school.
That's an interesting idea, how to combine it. Well, I think you could learn a lot from co-housing, because it's a question of that everyone is participating, and everyone together is forming the rules for that participation. So you can see the ideas behind what's happening, and you can see the consequences, and you learn from what you are doing. I think that's a good idea for schools too. Well, I know so little about the Basque countries, but I know that cooperation is a good school, and to be used to having these cooperative models to solve important issues. It's a good thing, I think. So there you have something, as well as I think that the Swedish democratic tradition also, the way we decide things together. So if you have a good schooling in that, then you are well prepared in living together. Both you know how to take decisions together, how to actually respect those decisions, and that you always can change them if you are many. Well, I think there are two main important things. One is the situation of families, men and women and children, to make everyday life more simple, not as hectic, more enjoyable. Co-housing is a way of doing that. And the other aspect is all us who are growing older and older. Europe is graying, and Spain is graying, and Sweden is graying. And we will be quite a big problem if you not allow us to take the responsibility to solve some of those problems by finding new ways of living together. I think that this is one important thing when it comes to the aging of Europe, to inspire us who are in our 60s, 70s, 80s, to find new solutions, to move to better ways, better flats, better housing in time, not to wait till we are so old that we have to move. And that's always a very bad situation. Take help of those co-housing groups, because they can inspire others in the same situation to act. And that will be a great help for politicians to use the problems of the future. And those problems, they are already here. Well, if I start with the global perspective, I can see that this idea of co-housing is, spreading all over the world, actually. There is a new organization in Portugal starting this year. You have your organization, and there are other organizations in so many different countries, in Korea, South Korea, in Japan, Australia, Canada, the United States, all over Europe. So I think there is an interesting future, and I think that there is so much to learn from other countries and other groups, what they are trying to achieve. And so I think, of course, there will be technical changes in these ideas. When we moved into our house, we had a smoking room for those who smoked cigarettes, but now it has turned into a room with a computer. And we did have no common computers in the house, but now we have 3, because when you're retired, it's expensive and a bit difficult sometimes to have your own computer, but to be able to have them together, it's a good way. And you can learn from others how to handle them and so on. So there will be these changes due to the technical evolution, but I think that the ideas behind co-housing seems to function well. They have functioned in Sweden for 40 years, in Denmark for 50 years. And there is a study showing that those living in co-housing in Denmark, they really are more satisfied, less alone, less vulnerable than people living in ordinary houses and flats. And so I think Denmark is a lesson to all the world, actually. It's a lot of hard work, actually. You must realize that, because society is not prepared for those ideas. So it takes time. It takes your capacity. It takes hard work, and it is worth it actually.